Hello everyone, and today I'm looking at a low budget lens for mirrorless cameras, the Sigma 19mm f2.8 EXDN. It's available on Sony E-mount and Micro 4/3, so it's able to cover APS-C sized sensors but not full frame, and as far as I know it's not available for Canon EOS M or Fuji X. This is the slightly older version of the lens. There's a newer version available now with a smoother cosmetic design, but the optics of both lenses are the same. It's available for £150 or around $200, so for an autofocus lens, that's a low price. The 19mm focal length is about the full frame equivalent of 28mm. Now personally, I don't really love 28mm, it's not a very exciting angle of view. It's not wide enough for your corners to look stretched and dramatic, but unlike 35mm, it doesn't really give you any emphasis on your subject. I find that 28mm gives a somewhat flat, natural perspective, but then again, that could be just what you're looking for. It's a focal length that doesn't really seem to add anything to your scene, if you know what I mean, but that's just my own opinion. The maximum aperture of this lens is f2.8, not very bright, but it's a little wider than your everyday kit lens to help you get pictures in darker situations and get more out of focus backgrounds. Remember though, this little lens does not have image stabilization. The build quality of the lens is nice and simple. It's small, although it's certainly no pancake lens, and with its metal lens mount, it does have a little weight to it. It has a small and unusual 46mm filter thread at the front. Its main control is the focus ring, which turns quite smoothly, although it is focused by wire. When using manual focus, it does seem to work quite responsively. One issue for the lens is that while its autofocus motor is pretty quiet, it's also quite slow. And that's it really. It's a very simple little lens. How about image quality? I'll be testing the lens in question on a Sony a6300 camera with its demanding 24MP APS-C sensor. At f2.8 in the middle of the image, the lens is pretty sharp, although there is a little ghosting. If we look in the corners, we see that they're a little soft, but not terribly bad. Stop down to f4 for better definition and contrast in those corners and excellent quality back in the middle. At f5.6, things are still great in the middle, and there's a further slight improvement in the corners. That's as good as they get there though, even stopped down to f11. So, the lens's picture quality is not too bad. It's just a little soft at f2.8, but stop down to f4 or f5.6 for some really fantastic picture quality. Let's see now about distortion and vignetting. It's good news here. There's a little barrel distortion visible, but even at f2.8, vignetting is nothing bad. However, even as you stop down the lens's aperture to f4 or f5.6, I found that the corners still remain just a little bit dark. Let's see now about close-up image quality. It can focus as closely as 20cm, which is good enough for smaller subjects. At f2.8, the image quality close-up is sharp, although there is some purple fringing. Stop down to f4 though for a lovely clean picture. How does the lens work against bright light? There are a few flaring artifacts to be seen here, but they're quite transparent and unobtrusive. And finally, bokeh. When you can get them, your out-of-focus backgrounds will generally look quite smooth, unless you're pitted against something quite difficult or busy. So, the Sigma 19mm f2.8, when used on a Sony camera at least, is a pretty nice enough option. I'm really not a fan of that particular focal length, as I mentioned already, but the lens is fine really. There's nothing wrong with it at all, it's good value for money, and of course it could get you some very nice pictures. It has good image quality, it's well done, but for me, it has a slightly unexciting focal length, an unexciting maximum aperture, and I kind of wish it was a little bit smaller. It'll work well, but it'll hardly rock your photographic world.